At the time of making this video, the X-Men are experiencing a renaissance. Thanks to the success of X-Men 97, a revival of the beloved 90s animated series, the group's impending arrival into the MCU, and the new From the Ashes comic book era set to begin this summer, it seems like Marvel's Merry Mutants are once again the talk of the superhero world. While the X-Men have been fan favourites on and off since the 1960s, exploding in popularity thanks to Chris Claremont's 16-year run on the comics, the team's recent history has been deeply fascinating. In 2019, following a period where the X-Men were intentionally de-emphasised by Marvel Comics, writer Jonathan Hickman breathed new life into the X-Men's world with his 12-part limited series, House of X and Powers of 10. This comic, designed to launch a brand new X-Men status quo, completely flipped the role of mutants in the Marvel Universe upside down, as Charles Xavier and his student trade the Westminster School for the sentient island of Krakoa, where instead of being superheroes trapped in a world that hates and fears them, they've become calculated and defiant nation builders in control of their own destiny. Although a stark contrast to any previous X-Men run, House of X was an exciting reimagining of one of Marvel's most beloved properties, taking the likes of Cyclops, Wolverine and Jean Grey into previously unexplored territories and reconfiguring the classic concepts that underpin the X-Men stories and turning it into a vast sci-fi epic about the trials and tribulations of building a mutant nation and combating both human and technological threats. However, all things must ultimately come to an end. In August of 2021, Hickman announced his abrupt departure from the X-Men series, with his swan song being the 4-issue miniseries Inferno. Created alongside artists Valerio Schiti, Stefano Caselli and RB Silva, Inferno is a comic I've had many complex feelings about for some time. It's a book that takes the established world of Hickman's X-Men into even more unexpected and surprising places, and much like the name suggests, burns down the walls that Charles Xavier, Magneto and Moira McTaggart had built 2 years earlier. But with the end of the Krakoan era fast approaching and a new generation of X-Men comics set to soon begin, now feels like the right time to dive back into Inferno and try to make sense of Hickman's fiery and shocking swan song. So in this video, I want to explain the history behind Inferno and the end of Jonathan Hickman's run on X-Men, discuss the factors that led up to this shocking and somewhat polarising event, and how its revelations coupled with the writer's unexpected departure set the stage for the inevitable fall of X. Before we continue though, just a quick reminder to leave a like on this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe to Owen Likes Comics so you don't miss out on any future videos. In order to understand Inferno's significance, it's first important to overview its place within the X-Men's modern history, specifically how it relates to Jonathan Hickman's run on the series. To give a little bit of context, although the X-Men were one of Marvel's most popular and well-marketed properties throughout the 1980s, 90s and early 2000s, the team's fortunes began to change soon after. Following the 2005 storyline Decimation, which reduced the world's mutant population down to a few hundred, the X-Men would suffer countless hardship and adversity, both on and off the printed page. Through storylines like Messiah Complex and Schism, readers would witness the destruction of the Xavier Institute and the team being disbanded, with a brutal civil war emerging between Cyclops and Wolverine soon after. In 2012, this reached a fever pitch with Avengers vs. X-Men, a comic that forever changed the mutant status quo due to Charles Xavier's murder at the hands of Cyclops. Avengers vs. X-Men would coincide with the rise of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, with the first Avengers film being released to great success around the same time. As such, Marvel would subsequently alter which comic book characters they sought to focus on to better synergize with their film outputs, meaning that properties like the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, whose movie rights were owned by other studios, would be somewhat pushed aside in favour of other characters. As such, the 2010s was a relatively lackluster decade for the mutant ensemble. While some well-received and memorable comics did emerge from this period, many fans felt at the time that the X-Men's role in the broader Marvel universe was being continuously de-emphasized. And with each passing year, they felt more and more like a far cry from the pop culture juggernaut they once were. This would eventually change though, after Disney agreed to purchase 20th Century Fox in 2019, bringing the X-Men film rights back to Marvel in the process. Writer Jonathan Hickman returned to Marvel and agreed to spearhead a brand new era of X-Men comic books. Prior to House of X, Hickman had taken a 4-year hiatus from Marvel after the release of his massive 2015 event Secret Wars, itself the culmination of a 3-year run on Avengers and his previous run on the Fantastic Four. Having established himself as one of the most prolific names in modern comics and a writer capable of reinventing established concepts and characters, Hickman was tasked with helming a bold relaunch of the X-Men books that would be unlike anything seen previously. Teaming with artist Pepe Larraz and RB Silver, Hickman's vision for the mutant heroes would start to be displayed in July of 2019, when Marvel announced they would abruptly cancel every ongoing X-Men comic and in their place release 2 brand new weekly comics, titled House of X and Powers of 10. Over the next 12 weeks, Hickman and his collaborators would completely rebuild the X-Men status quo from the ground up. House of X would immediately throw us in the deep end of a bizarre reimagining of the X-Men's world, revealing that Professor X, Magneto, and longtime X-Men ally Moira McTaggart had all been working in secret for years to establish Krakoa, a sovereign nation built for all mutants on Earth, situated on the same sentient island that once kidnapped the X-Men decades ago. Whilst the 6 issues of House of X detailed Krakoa's formation, the X-Men's role in this new society, and the reaction of the wider human world, its sister series Powers of 10 couples this with visions of a dystopian future, where mutants are hunted and exterminated not by humans but by the looming threat of AI. At the centre of both of these series is Moira McTaggart, who Hickman controversially retcons to be a mutant with the ability to reincarnate upon her death, retaining the memories of each previous life she's lived. After dedicating her existence to find a way for mutants to survive and overcome their seemingly inevitable destruction, we follow Moira in her 10th life as she attempts to alter the course of history and convince Charles and Magneto to put their ideological differences aside and help build Krakoa and fight for mutant kind on a united front. Although it was initially controversial at the time of release due to Hickman's unapologetic and bold reworking of the X-Men lore, House of X and Powers of 10 proved to be the spark of an exciting new generation for not only X-Men comics but Marvel comics as a whole, bringing readers back to the Merry Mutants and charting a truly memorable and unique chapter in the team's long-standing history. When considering the impact that House and Powers had, as well as how it established the future direction of X-Men comics, I sat down with fellow YouTuber and longtime X-Men fan, Ernie from BlerdWithoutFear, and asked him what he thought about this bold new take on mutant kind. When the announcement was made, and we'll talk about the actual specifics of those 2 series next, but just thinking about when the announcement was made, what was your reaction? Were you someone that was a Hickman fan going into this?
I mean, I liked Hickman going in, because by that point I had already, not in its entirety, but I had already been kind of in on Hickman through like East of West and like, you know, was it Black Monday Murders, and, you know, so on and so forth. It was, I was interested. I wasn't really sure what to think though. Like, it was one of those, like, I wasn't really sure if I was going to like it. Like, I wasn't, because I didn't, like, I was like, I don't know. I was like, I like his Avengers.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I like Secret Wars, but I don't know about this. Like, I was like, I don't know about Hickman and X-Men. I figured it was going to be something special. I honestly did not know how. I just because that's,
and I don't think anyone would have expected
Hickman.
what it was either.
No, like, and I remember him even saying like, no one's gonna see this coming, and I was like, I know I didn't. With and having a what I felt at the time was a very strong, you know, IQ on on X-Men related things, having read them since I was like a little kid.
Yeah, you think you've seen like the boundaries of what can and can't be done with the X-Men,
right?
And then Hickman comes in and just like, and it's something that like I've always admired about writers like Hickman and Morrison and people like Tom King to an extent, is the willing to like take an IP and just see how far they can bend it before it breaks.
Right.
Doing it in a way that's not disrespectful to the characters and who they are. So I knew that it was going to be something unique and something big. Hickman wasn't going to come to X-Men and his big thing be like, we're back in the mansion. It's not going to be like a return
Right.
to an old era. It's going to be something brand new. And it was. House of X marked a new beginning for the X-Men comics, revitalizing interest for many lapsed fans and making the mutant ensemble the talk of the superhero genre once again. By throwing readers deep into this unusual status quo, Hickman took us all on an exciting journey into Krakoa and its place within the wider X-Men lore, as well as foreshadowing the potential threats of what could seemingly bring this utopian society down, from Orchis, a collection of human scientists seeking to advance the development of AI, Nimrod, the Phalanx, and even Mr. Sinister. But while the seeds of Krakoa's eventual demise were planted from the very beginning, House of X and Powers of 10 concludes with triumph, as the X-Men are resurrected following a suicide mission at an Orchis base, the United Nations recognize Krakoa as a sovereign nation, and Xavier and Magneto toast to their new beginnings, with both men believing that their dreams have now been realized. We would soon learn that dark secrets were hidden in the very heart of this mutant nation, secrets that, if unearthed, could burn all of Krakoa to the ground. Following the conclusion of House of X and Powers of 10, Marvel would unveil a new line of ongoing X-Men books released under the banner of Dawn of X. Now, while House of X was largely the product of Hickman's singular vision, Dawn of X saw the writer create a brain trust of other creative teams who would collectively map out the future direction for Marvel's mutant heroes. Dawn of X ran from October 2019 to November 2020, culminating in the crossover event 10 of Swords. This series would further explore the history of Krakoa and its sister nation Araco, and so a war emerged between the two islands' factions. Throughout Dawn and its follow-up era Reign of X, Hickman would serve as the main writer for the flagship X-Men title, and while this book largely focused on the role of Cyclops, Wolverine and Jean Grey in this new Krakoan society as well as their battle against Orchis, it also featured several other plot points that directly set up the events of Inferno. Namely, in X-Men issue 6, we see Mystique experience a vision of her deceased wife Destiny, which causes her to push for Destiny's resurrection on Krakoa. Mystique is then approached by Charles Xavier, who asks her to gather intel and destroy an Orchis base that is set to activate a mother mold. Mystique agrees under the promise that Destiny will be revived upon her return. Mystique discovers that Nimrod is set to come online far earlier than anticipated, and after being caught and killed by Orchis, she's resurrected on Krakoa and gives this intel to Xavier. However, the issue concludes with Mystique experiencing another dream of Destiny, where her late wife warns her of Krakoa's formation, and that if the Professor doesn't agree to bring her back, then she should burn the entire place to the ground. Later in issue 20, Charles sends Mystique to destroy Nimrod before he is activated, emphasizing that the android is the greatest potential threat to mutant survival. Mystique ultimately fails, and after being killed by Nimrod, she returns to Krakoa and demands that Destiny be finally brought back to life, only for Charles to sternly refuse. The issue concludes with Charles and Magneto visiting Moira McTaggart in her no place, marking the first time we have seen the character since the end of House of X. Here, Moira coldly and stoically stares at the pair whilst reading from Destiny's notebooks. The events of these two issues were designed to set up Inferno, a 4-issue series designed to culminate Reign of X and begin the third and presumably final chapter in the larger Krakoan saga. However, in August of 2021, Marvel made a shocking and unexpected announcement. First reported by Entertainment Weekly, it was revealed that Jonathan Hickman would depart from the X-Men books following the release of Inferno's final issue, citing a change in creative direction as the catalyst for this decision. Hickman is quoted in Entertainment Weekly as stating,
"When I pitched the X-Men story I wanted to do, I pitched a very big, very broad, 3-act, 3-event narrative, the first of which was House of X. And while this loosely worked as a 3-year plan, I told Marvel up front that I honestly had no idea how long the first part would last, because there were a lot of interesting ideas that I had seeded that other creators would want to play with, and so we left this rather open-ended. During the pandemic, when the time came for me to start pointing things towards writing the second act event, I asked everyone if they were ready for me to do that, and, to a man, everyone wanted to stay in the first act. It was really interesting, because I appreciated that House of X resonated with them to the extent that they didn't want it to end. But the reality was that I knew I would be leaving the line early.
As a result, Inferno would not only be the end of Reign of X, but also the fiery culmination of Hickman's 2-year run on the X-Men comics, attempting to answer the unresolved threads and ideas first established in House and Powers, while simultaneously setting the stage for a brand new direction in its unexpected aftermath. Much like House of X before it, Inferno opens in a rather unusual fashion, as Professor X and Magneto emerge from resurrection pods where they're confronted by Emma Frost, who, wearing Charles's helmet, proclaims, "To me, my X-Men." Jumping back several days, we learn that the X-Men have been sent to combat Nimrod after his activation. Meanwhile, we follow Moira McTaggart as she travels to Mer Island, visiting her old lab and discovering a journal containing her attempts to create a mutant cure. This causes Moira to experience a flashback to her third life, where she works as a geneticist who successfully found a way to eliminate the X gene before she was assassinated by the Brotherhood of Mutants. In particular, she remembers Destiny's role in her assassination, where she stated that if Moira doesn't commit all of her remaining lives to advancing the mutant cause, Destiny will track her down and kill her in each one. Shaken by this memory, Moira returns to Krakoa, where Xavier and Magneto await her in the No Place. Here, Charles explains that the X-Men's attempts to destroy Nimrod have failed, and fears that his sudden activation will completely throw their plan off course. Moira rebukes this, stating that Nimrod is not their main concern, and that Mystique's quest to revive Destiny should be their primary focus, even going as far as to demand that Mystique be removed from the Quiet Council and Destiny's genetic material be destroyed. Later, the various members of the Quiet Council meet, and it's explained that a seat has been vacated due to Apocalypse relocating to Ameth during Ten of Swords. Following Moira's order, Xavier proposes that this would be a good time to re-elect the Council's members. His speech, though, is interrupted by Mystique, who reveals her nomination for the Council's empty seat, as Destiny suddenly appears and sits beside Charles and Magneto. With this shocking revelation, the comic flashes back to explain Destiny's resurrection, revealing that Mystique, impersonating both Charles and Magneto, retrieved her genetic material from Mr. Sinister, and then instructed the Five, a group of mutants with the collective ability to recreate the body of deceased mutants, to remake Destiny's body before Hope Summers re-implanted her memories. With Destiny alive once again, Mystique devised a plan to secure her a seat on the Council, as well as get revenge on Xavier and Eric for denying her revival. Back at the Quiet Council though, Charles questions Destiny's reappearance and raises a motion to remove Mystique from it entirely, to which Destiny offers to tell Xavier what the outcome of that vote would be. As Charles backs down, Mystique raises her motion to add Destiny to the Council, which passes as Nightcrawler, Exodus, Mr. Sinister, Sebastian Shaw and Emma Frost all vote yes, while Charles, Magneto, Storm and Kitty Pryde vote no. With their plan having backfired, Xavier and Magneto regroup in Moira's No Place, where she chastises the duo for allowing Destiny to be revived and sit on the Council. Moira pressures Eric to kill Destiny, but he refuses as it would violate the Krakoan laws. Instead, the trio propose making a deal with Emma Frost to secure the majority once again on the Council, letting her in on the secrets of Moira's existence and Krakoa's role in safeguarding mutants' future in the process. As such, Moira reveals herself to Emma alongside Charles and Eric, allowing the White Queen to read her mind and experience all of her past lives. Now aware of Moira's secrets, Emma is disgusted by the three's plotting and secrecy, stating that they do not have mutant kind's best interests at heart and refuses to take part in their scheme to consolidate power on the Council. With Emma refusing to engage in their plan, Xavier and Magneto instead recruit Colossus, while Emma meets with Mystique and Destiny and reveals Moira's existence to the pair. This revelation allows Destiny to see Moira in her visions, theorizing that due to her role in killing Moira in her third life, her revival was forbidden due to her ability to tell if Moira's plan to save mutant kind will actually work. The three women form an uneasy alliance to get revenge on Xavier, Magneto and Moira, with Emma even revealing the location of Moira's No Place within the core of Krakoa. As Mystique and Destiny track down Moira's location, the comic provides exposition into how No Places work, while also revealing that Cypher, Warlock and Krakoa itself are all aware of their existence and have discovered Moira's hideout. We even see Cypher and Krakoa eavesdropping on Moira's meeting with Charles and Eric. With the secrets of Krakoa seemingly bubbling up to the surface, Moira is kidnapped by Orchis soldiers while in Paris, with Xavier receiving a distress call soon after. He and Magneto are able to locate Moira, but when they arrive, they're met with a room of dead bodies before being ambushed by Nimrod and Omega Sentinel. The two men realise they've entered a trap, while Moira is revealed to have been taken back to Krakoa, held hostage by Destiny and Mystique. The two women hold Moira at gunpoint, explaining their revenge plot despite Moira's insistence that death will only resurrect her. Their exchanges intercut with Xavier and Magneto battling with Nimrod, where they're both defeated and killed by the unstoppable android. Back on Krakoa though, Mystique fires a gun at Moira as the comic flashes white, and when we return, it's explained that she had used a gun designed by Forge to eliminate the mutant gene, effectively killing the mutant Moira X and returning her to her human form, meaning that she can be killed without it resetting the universe. Knowing she's been defeated, Moira verbally unloads on the pair, stating that in all the lives she's lived, she's experienced nothing but pain, war, and the death of her people, and all she wanted to do was find a solution that gives mutant kind some peace. Destiny scoffs at this and says that Moira's intentions weren't for Krakoa to exist as a mutant utopia, but a suicide plan, gathering the entire mutant population in one place before being able to eradicate them all. Echoing their encounter in Moira's third life, where she decried her powers as a curse, Moira admits to this scheme, declaring it to be the only humane solution left since mutant kind will never defeat AI. But before Mystique can execute Moira for treason, they're interrupted by Cypher and Krakoa, who explain that due to Moira now being a human, her murder is forbidden under Krakoan law. They urge Mystique to let Moira go, where she'll instead be exiled and forced to live out the rest of her life as a human, to which she and Destiny reluctantly agree, realizing that she would become a martyr in death. Krakoa opens a gate as Moira scurries through it, with Mystique vowing to hunt her down if she ever reappears and threatens her people again. A week later, the comic returns to the events of its opening page, as Charles and Eric are resurrected by the Five in a ceremony presided over by Emma Frost. Having now exposed Moira's plans and the duo's role in furthering them to the rest of the council, the once promising future of Krakoa now suddenly seems bleak, as the council members realise that this paradise was built on a bed of lies, deception and manipulation. The council somberly reconvenes and declares that Krakoa's future lies not in its self-appointed leaders, but in the elected representatives of each corner of mutant kind. And even if this society is not the utopia that they once thought, it still remains their best shot at creating a united front and a home for their people. And while the inferno of Moira's lies may have damaged it, it still remains the X-Men's home and their greatest defense against whatever may come. But before we continue, I'd just like to take a moment and thank the sponsor of today's video, The Man Who Stole the World Cup, an exciting new book now on Kickstarter with an equally tremendous story behind it. The Man Who Stole the World Cup is the product of lifelong comic fans and father and son duo John and Paul Machin. Originally written by John in the 1980s, the series intertwines his love with football with a burning passion for science fiction, comic books and coming-of-age escapism. The book focuses on two children in 1986 who were pulled 20 years back in time and forced to solve the mystery of who stole the iconic World Cup trophy, preventing the collapse of not only football's biggest tournament, but the entire course of history. It's one part Doctor Who, one part Days of Future Past, and a love letter to the beautiful game and the community that both men are a part of. This story has been a lifelong passion for both Paul and John, and after John's wife and Paul's mother was sadly diagnosed with dementia, the duo decided that it was finally time to bring their story to life. I had a chance to read the book recently and found it to be immensely charming, exhilarating and truly heartwarming, and knowing what this book means to both Paul, John and their family made me want to support the pair's project even more. So click the link in the video description and check out The Man Who Stole the World Cup on Kickstarter. I've already backed the project and I hope that you will too. Serving as the finale to Jonathan Hickman's 2-year run on the X-Men comics, Inferno provided a fiery and destructive end, while simultaneously opening up an exciting new era for the mutant population of Krakoa. In the immediate aftermath of Inferno, Krakoan society is shaken by the revelation of not just Moira McTaggart's existence, but the true nature of her plan for the mutant island. The roles of Charles Xavier and Magneto, particularly within the Quiet Council, is also affected, with both being outed for colluding with Moira and hiding their plans from the rest of the council. As a result, Magneto leaves Krakoa altogether and relocates to Araco, while Charles is forced to grapple with Moira's betrayal and manipulation. Inferno's conclusion transitioned the series into the third era of the Krakoan saga, Destiny of X, the first without any formal involvement from Hickman. Unsurprisingly, given both the creative shake-up behind the scenes and Inferno's revelations, this era of stories focus heavily on questioning Krakoa's future direction, as the X-Men are no longer working off a grand predetermined plan to save their people, but instead blindly charting their own destiny. The launch title for Destiny of X was Benjamin Percy, Joshua Cassaro, and Federico Vincenti's 10-issue limited series X Lives and X Deaths of Wolverine, a comic notable for the return of Moira McTaggart in a hugely unexpected way. Although Inferno can be read as the end of Moira's story, with Hickman reverting her to a human in the book's climax, Percy and co bring the character back as we follow her attempts to break into Krakoa, seeking to regain her powers and exact revenge on those who betrayed her. All the while, she's hunted by a mysterious figure revealed to be a version of Wolverine, sent back from the future and infected by the Phalanx. During the events of X Lives and Deaths, Moira kills Banshee and uses his skin to enter the Krakoan gates. Having fully transitioned from an idealist to a pure survivalist, Moira holds Destiny hostage and demands her powers be restored or she'll destroy the entire island. This is prevented though when Moira is stabbed and killed by the Phalanx Wolverine, mirroring her sacrifice in Life 9, while it's revealed that this version of Logan was sent back from a timeline where Moira destroyed all of mutant kind. In one final twist though, X Lives and Deaths concludes with Moira's final resurrection, as she emerges from her grave in a cybernetic body, fully cementing the end of her connection to the mutant population and the beginning of her alliance with Orcus, as Destiny of X unfolded in the subsequent years, later being succeeded by the final era in the Krakoan saga, Fall of X. I think Inferno remains a truly fascinating and noteworthy story, both as Jonathan Hickman's farewell to the X-Men's world, and also a deconstruction of the role of mutants and their mission within Marvel's universe. During my conversation with Ernie from Blurred Without Fear, we discussed what Inferno means in the broader scope of modern X-Men, and how the story seeks to encapsulate the overarching themes of Hickman's entire run.
So thinking about Inferno and what it does with Moira's character and the direction, like reading it as one big story that starts with House and Powers, runs through like Dawn of X, and ends with Inferno. What do you think of it, and what do you think like Hickman is trying to say about Moira and the X-Men in general?
I mean, I kind of feel, man, there's a lot of feelings that I have about it. Like, I felt like once you kind of got to, by the time you get through all that, you get to Inferno, and you have a Moira McTaggart who already no longer resembles the Moira McTaggart you probably already knew. Now this Moira doesn't really resemble very much the Moira McTaggart that we were starting to get to know. And it just made me realize that maybe, like, without really knowing full well what the plan was, I felt like maybe he was just trying to make a case that, you know, sometimes even your greatest allies don't always have, you know, your best interest in heart, even if they think they do. The idea of Moira trying to create a mutant cure, which for her, if it was just for herself, I would say like, you know what, hey, whatever. It'll probably fall into the wrong hands, as things like that are always,
which has happened like countless times in X-Men comics.
Oh yeah, no. Oh, like need we look no further than Forge's mutant power neutralizer gun, which literally reappears in this book, and is it is what depowers Moira. And this was a gun that he made because reasons, just he wanted to be there to,
I will say,
right
rereading Inferno after the life death episodes of like the anime of X-Men 97 and them redoing the Storm arc was really interesting to be like, oh shit, I forgot that Forge's gun is like the main catalyst of this story.
Oh yeah, no, like 100%. And you go back and you look at that, and it's just like, yeah, sometimes people can have the, it was my granny used to always tell me this: the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah,
and that's and something that thinking about maybe why this is titled as it is. It's like that's kind of what I feel ultimately it leads to. It's like, yeah, Moira started out being just a normal person who discovers that she is different, that she is a mutant, that she's not like everybody else, and now she doesn't want to be special. Like, she's a person who's become special. She doesn't want to be special, and she wants to get rid of it. And yeah, she probably, initially, I think, yeah, maybe that was the point, maybe to just take care of herself. But then it became this thing where she realized that, there are outside forces that don't want her doing what she's about to do. And yeah, you go down this road of trying to figure out how to get it right. But yeah, I feel like over time, something must have happened that, I think we kind of see what happens that, had shifted in her, because you go back to Powers of 10 and she learns more about like the Dominion and all that other stuff. And it kind of becomes this deal where, well, now instead of just not wanting to be a mutant, I just simply don't want to die.
Yeah.
And it becomes this
kind of
very
becomes
selfish
self-preservation journey for her a little bit.
Right. It's not about it's not about saving mutant kind. It's not about, humanity or anything of that nature. It just kind of goes from this situation where she lived long enough to become the villain. And she may have started out with noble intentions, but it all became about selfishness and preserving herself to the detriment of everyone else.
I mean, I think for me, like trying to like work out what Hickman's trying to say here in this book is really interesting. And I think my reading of it, there's a couple of like lenses I think I can read it in, but the big thing that I keep coming back to is that idea of like pride comes before the fall.
Yeah.
Where it's like, we talked about Xavier and Magneto in House and Powers, where they are, not only do they know they've won, they are like flaunting the fact that they've won. They are toying with the world because they know that they've won, because Moira is feeding them this belief that if we follow the path we're on, we are going to win. It's not even up for debate. And then that hubris kind of comes crashing down from within. It's not ultimately what brings that era of Krakoa down isn't Nimrod, though he plays a role in this story. It's not Orcus. It's Mystique and Destiny. It's two mutants. It's two members of Krakoan society who have been wronged and manipulated by Charles, by Magneto, and by Moira, and Emma Frost as well. And I think it's interesting that that's the way that Hickman decides to leave his X-Men. Is it's not like he could have very much ended it with the destruction of Krakoa, and the X-Men are disparate and placed from the ashes or whatever we're calling it this time. But the fact that like his run doesn't end with any definitive statement almost. Like it's not the fall of Krakoa, it's not the fall of X, but it is like the first crack in the foundation.
Yeah.
It's Charles and Eric kind of losing their status as these like unquestionable elders of mutant society. And these people that always claim to have the best intentions of mutants in their hearts, when in reality it's exposed that they've gaslit their fellow mutants, they've manipulated them, and also without even fully realizing they've been working in the best interest of someone that's trying to kill them all. So it kind of takes them down a peg. And like I said, it's that idea that like the Krakoan nation state will still exist, but it isn't really this kind of like paradise and this idyllic place that it was introduced as. It is a nation. It is it's a kingdom, and like any nation, it comes with trials and tribulations. And I think that might ultimately be what Hickman's saying here, is that building a safe haven in a nation comes with doing a lot of shit that you're not going to be proud of, and even the X-Men, even mutant kind, isn't above that.
I mean, even to have for as much as Krakoa was supposed to be like a Garden of Eden for mutant kind, I mean, it was only in so much as that there was a snake. It's only in so much as that there was a snake in the garden waiting to strike. It is, but no, I 100% agree with that. That it is. Yeah, when you look at it, the framework of what Krakoa is, and I've even said as much before that it wasn't a perfect place. It's all fun and games to say that we're going to create a home for mutant kind that's for mutants by mutants, but that doesn't mean that anything's going to be any different than where we were before.
And it's interesting to me that like the two of the characters that are kind of presented as the heroes in this story, Mystique and Emma, are also characters that have immense skeletons in their closet.
Oh yeah.
They're like Charles and Eric and Moira are vilified, and yet these characters are presented as the heroes. Characters who historically were villains.
Oh, and Ed
And I think that does
Dunson.
show that like no one's without sin on Krakoa.
Over the past few years since it was released, I spent a lot of time thinking about Inferno and trying to work out its place and symbolism within the broader tale of Jonathan Hickman's X-Men. To me, this comic is a cautionary tale about leaders who make grand promises, how power can corrupt even those with the best of intentions, and how to grapple with the inherent sins and tragedies that come with building a nation. When Hickman launched this new era back in House of X, it seemed like the X-Men's dream had finally been realised. Mutants now had a place to live free from persecution, and they were a united front for the first time. Alongside this, they unknowingly had Moira McTaggart, whose foresight and knowledge of the future enabled them to devise a strategy that would result in their long-term survival and prosperity. Now, Hickman wasn't afraid to highlight the less positive aspects of this status quo throughout Dawn and Reign of X. The writer made it clear that for all of Krakoa's good, it wasn't a utopian society, and its existence came with a fair share of hardship, trials, and tribulations. But it isn't really until Inferno that the uncomfortable truths of Krakoa are fully unearthed. The twist surrounding Moira's real plan for mutant kind is a shocking and unexpected way for Hickman to end his time writing X-Men, seemingly burning down the status quo he established and drastically changing our understanding of Krakoa and its place within the past and present of mutant kind. Hickman's swan song is bittersweet, but it's also in a lot of ways defiant. While House of X ended with joyful celebration, Inferno does end with a somber meeting of the Quiet Council, where they, now aware of the lies at the heart of their new nation, collectively decide not to abandon Krakoa, but to instead accept its uneasy truths and build a better tomorrow atop them. By the end of this story, it becomes abundantly clear that Krakoa wasn't the paradise the X-Men initially believed it to be, and it will take time for the likes of Xavier and Magneto to regain the trust they lost due to their deception and collusion. But even if Krakoa isn't perfect, Inferno's ending reminds us that it's still mutant kind's best chance at survival. As Xavier himself stated back in House of X number 6, is what we have perfect? No. What is? But it's a start, and a good one. More so than anything else, I think Hickman's parting gift to the X-Men, both in terms of characters and the writers and artists that would continue their stories in his exit, is actually possibility. Through the invention of Krakoa, mutants were finally freed from the shackles of oppression by humanity, and now with Moira's exile, they're now also free from their predestined fate, able to choose whatever path they seek to go down. The future may not be clear from this point onwards, but the important thing that Hickman seeks to remind us here is that the X-Men are now in charge of their own destiny and deciding on what comes next, not as a group of individuals, but truly as a people. With this in mind, it's unsurprising that Destiny herself plays such a crucial role in Moira's downfall, and that the post-Inferno era is not only named Destiny of X, but spends so much time questioning and pondering on the future direction of both the X-Men and Krakoa as a nation. And even though this likely wasn't the original story that Hickman intended to end his X-Men run on, I think Inferno remains a genuinely bold and unique deconstruction of what the Krakoan era of X-Men meant and represented up until this point, allowing future writers the freedom to recontextualize and reinvent it in many new and interesting ways. The dream may not have been realised as intended, and the world may not have changed in the ways that many hoped, but mutant kind emerges from Inferno emboldened and reminded of what it is they're fighting for, enabling the X-Men to once again evolve and rise from the ashes, taking back the pen and writing their next chapter of their never-ending and enthralling story. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on this video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on everything we talked about in today's video. I can't wait to hear what you have to say as always. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notify bell so you don't miss out on any future videos. And if you enjoyed this and you want some more, there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might also enjoy. If you want to help support the channel and help me make more videos, you can go to patreon.com/OwenLikesComics. Or if you just want some more of me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram, just at Owen Likes Comics. I want to thank Ernie from Blurred Without Fear for joining me in this video. Ernie is a wonderful creator and someone who is incredibly knowledgeable about all things X-Men, Marvel, and beyond. I will leave links to his socials and his channels in the description, so if you're not already following his work, please do go and do so. But that's all for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you next time. But until then, take care and keep reading.